This is Frank Allen, The Searchers. Every time that you walk in the room, go straight to the top of the charts.
Yay!
Go straight to the top of the charts. Go straight to the top of the charts. From 10 to 1, you got a show number 1 when you go straight to the top of the charts. Top of the charts, top of the charts. That song's gonna climb to the top. When you go straight to the top of the charts. When you go straight to the top of the charts. When you go straight to the top, right to the top. When you go straight to the top of the charts. Frank Allen from The Searchers. The man is a living legend. We love him. Australia loves him. All the world love him. And let me tell you, you were there when the Beatles were big and The Searchers were one of the biggest bands in Liverpool. And let me tell you, you got to tell me about that experience. You joined the band at the end of 64. You're at the height of Beatlemania. Tell me what that was like.
Beginning of 64, it was actually August the 3rd, 64. I'd actually turned the job down once, believe it or not, because I was with a band called Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers. I was offered the job with the Searchers, but I didn't want to rock the boat with the band I was with. And then I was walking down the street with our sax player one day in Ireland. I hadn't told any of the band about this offer. And suddenly I told it to this guy called Moss, our sax player at the time. He turned around and said, "You've been offered a job with one of the biggest bands in the world and you've turned it down. Don't be so bloody stupid. Get on the phone, tell them you want the job and ask them if they want a sax player as well." I thought, well, maybe he's right. So I did, and that was it. August the 3rd, 64. It was a Monday night. It was the Coventry Theatre in England. And that was it. That was my first night with the Searchers. And the first time I met Dusty Springfield, who was our support act.
Oh, wow.
Wonderful time.
She's beautiful. Now, I've got to tell you, the first song you recorded, right, that was released was When You Walk in the Room. How was that doing a Jackie DeShannon song? That's a great song.
It's a fantastic song. And it's one of those perfect pop songs. It wasn't as big on our catalogue as Needles and Pins and Don't Throw Your Love Away, because it just missed out on the #1 spot. But it's the song that's been covered most by every other artist. I went to see a concert by Paul Carrack at the Palladium in London, March the 31st last year. And it was the last show that was on before lockdown. And he knew I was coming into the audience. So on his encore, he sang When You Walk in the Room. And the whole place in the Palladium was up on their feet and singing it. It was very emotional. And it's just one of those very, very special songs. I was so lucky to be on When You Walk in the Room. It's got everything. It's got great tune. It's got great lyrics. It's got that fantastic guitar riff. And just it was so fortunate to be on that recording.
Now I'm going to hand you over to the fabulous Sabine, and she's going to tell you about your chart success.
All right, good.
Hey, Frank. So yeah, so we're talking about this fantastic feel-good tune. I mean, they all are feel-good tunes, you know. But number 3, right, in 64. That's just amazing. And then Love Potion, number 9. I mean, that's one of my personal favorites, and that hit in the USA. So just tell me, Frank, what was it like with sort of touring? Because that's a big part of a band, obviously touring the songs, you know, and reaching the fans. So what was it like? What are your memories, and what for you was the highlight?
In the hit days as opposed to what came later. I mean, when we were having hit records, we were touring under quite good conditions in proper tour buses, and of course Screaming Girls. We went to the States in 64, the first time I went with the band, and it was amazing, the people that you'd meet your heroes. The first time I ever went to America with the Searchers, it was just the beginning of September 64. We went where we started off with a week of concerts at the Fox Theatre in Brooklyn, New York. And we did 6 shows every day, starting at 10 in the morning and finishing at 10 at night. And the bill on every show, if you can believe this, was the Searchers, Dusty Springfield, Millie, Marvin Gaye, the Supremes, Martha and the Vandellas, Smokey and the Miracles, the Temptations, the Contours, Little Anthony, the Ronettes, the Shangri-Las, the Dovells, the New Beats, and one more I forgot. Oh, Jay and the Americans. That's it. I mean, all of those acts, 6 shows every day for a week. Can you imagine it? Astonishing.
Fantastic.
And as soon as we finished that bit in New York, we went on to travel across the country doing a couple of shows. We picked up some more people in Los Angeles, such as Peter and Gordon, and Eden Kane and Del Shannon. And then we flew across to New Zealand and Australia to do my first tour with the band out in Australia. And that was the beginning of my love affair with Australia.
How many times in total have you been in Australia?
Difficult to tell, because we did obviously those first 2 big tours. The 64 one, we were headlining with Del Shannon as our main support. Then the 66 one where the Stones were topping the bill and we were finishing the first half. But when the hit stopped, we carried on coming to Australia, doing the pubs, the hotels and things like that. And we spent some great times. I mean, on a different kind of scale, because we were no longer the flavor of the month, and it was, you know, you have to adapt to whatever your career dictates. And from that point onwards, we kept on coming to Australia with gaps, you know, to a certain extent. We were doing places like Dorset Gardens and so many places, I've forgotten them all. And then there was a long gap, maybe in the 80s, where we didn't appear there for a long time. But as we came into the new millennium, we created a new career for ourselves on the theatre circuit in Australia and just built up a whole new audience, which has stuck with us till we kind of stopped touring for a while, a couple of years.
And so you have a big fan base in the UK. I'm based in Twickenham. I'm not far from Eel Pie Island and all that. So I've got a lot of
Eel Pie Island.
Yeah.
I only ever played at Eel Pie Island once, and it wasn't with the Searchers. It was my previous band, Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers. It was winter, and it was so freezing cold on that place. I remember playing my bass guitar with Blue Willy gloves on because it was that cold.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to come back and see us, because we've got the Eel Pie Club, which is run by Gina and Warren, and we've got all kinds of artists in the 60s and 70s, and we're keeping the spirit going. And please come and see us sometime. So we'd love to see you. It'd be lovely.
Oh yeah. Well, as I say, we're having a bit of a hiatus at the moment. We stopped touring just in time, by good fortune, just before the COVID thing hit. So it saved us an awful lot of trouble, having got all the logistics out of the way. Before that would have stopped us anyway. But there have been pressures on the band, pressures on me in particular, because I'm holding back at the moment. I want to enjoy the good rest, but there's pressures to tour again, and there's vague, talk of doing something in 2023. I don't know if I want to do it by that time. I'll have to make some kind of decision by late this year or early next year, because it takes a long time to set up. But who knows? We may tour again for a short while, for a limited period. Never say never again.
Now, Frank, I've got to ask you about your Burns bass guitar, where that ended up, and tell me about what you've got at the moment, the guitar you've got, and I noticed you've got another bass. If you can show everybody that. Yeah,
the Burns bass guitar is the one that everyone remembers. The one I played on When You Walk in the Room and all those early hit records with the Searchers was a Gibson EBO, little red SG-shaped guitar, and that was my first bass guitar. Eventually, I gave that to the Hard Rock Cafe, and the last time I saw it, it was in a frame along with the cover of one of our albums in the Hard Rock Cafe in Reykjavik in Iceland. Where it is now, I don't know. Hard Rock switched their stuff around all over the time. The Burns bass guitar, with that monstrous great thing, white thing, enormous. I mean, it was a pig of a bass, I've got to tell you. It was no fun to play, but everyone remembers it. And I eventually got rid of it. Once I stopped using it, I part exchanged it in London at one of the music shops for a Harmony Sovereign acoustic guitar, because I wanted an acoustic guitar to play at home. And in those days, you didn't keep all your guitars. We weren't rich enough to keep all our guitars. So you got one, you part exchange it for another one. And I remember going to New York about 8 years ago now, and I went to a free concert in Greenwich Village. And one of the guys on the show was Marshall Crenshaw, who was a big British Invasion fan. So he came down to speak to me before he went on stage. And he said, I've been catching up with a load of your stuff, archive stuff on YouTube. He says, whatever happened to that big bass guitar that you had? I mean, he remembered it. It's amazing the impact it had, but it was a pig of a guitar to play. I've got another one here. Hang on, I'll put this.
Oh.
This is my J200 acoustic guitar, which actually is left in my will to Bruce Welch of the Shadows, because when he comes round to this is the guitar that he plays. It's a 1960 Put that up there.
Brilliant.
The guitar, the last guitar I used on stage is this replica Fender first issue of the Precision bass. It is a replica. It's not a 51 bass, but that's the one. And I love this one because this is the one that all the old rock and roll players used to use in the 50s, like Jerry Lee's bass player and Carl Perkins' bass. It's a big guitar, so it won't really fit into the shots. Okay,
that's a beauty,
it's the first shape of the Fender Precision bass guitar. People tend to call it the Telecaster guitar because the headstock is the Telecaster shape, but it's not a Telecaster. I'm a bit of a pedant with guitar collection because I have a whole room of them upstairs. The Telecaster bass guitar was an issue in the 70s. This one with this headstock was the first issue of the Fender Precision bass. So there we are.
When you guys were up there and you're up there with the Beatles, just tell me, did you have conversations with Paul McCartney about basses?
No, I've never had a long conversation with Paul. He's always Charlie Chan when I run into him. Last time I ran into him was probably about 4 years ago at the Caprice restaurant in London, and it was just a passing conversation. That's my text coming through. I'll ignore it. And our ships have passed, but I don't think we've ever sat down and talked about basses. In fact, I've never talked at length to any of the Beatles. We've done a lot of shows with them, but I was never, especially in the early days, I was never secure enough to kind of like ingratiate myself into the company. It's been, in fact, the first time I ever met John Lennon. I've got to tell you this story because if you're going to meet a Beatle for the first time, it might as well be significant. Now, this was December 31st, 1962. I was still in the Rebel Rousers. I was at the Star Club in Hamburg. We just arrived the night before. We just saw the Beatles for the very first time. We'd heard everyone in the club talk about the Beatles, and we wondered what it was all about. So I watched them. They were great. The next day, I was coming into the dressing room backstage at the Star Club. Lennon was coming out. I introduced myself and I said, I really enjoyed your show last night, and I hear you got a new single coming out. I wish you all the best with it. And he kind of leered at me. I can only say it's a bit like a snake when it looks at a rabbit it's just about to eat. And he said, oh yeah, Frank, isn't it? Yeah, I enjoyed your show as well. I've been talking to people in the club about you, and apparently next to Cliff in the band, you're the most popular member. I can't think why. Your harmonies are bloody ridiculous. And he didn't say bloody. So I stood there thinking, I'm not sure if I've been insulted or this is Liverpudlian humour or whatever. Yeah, so I just said to him, well, anyway, it's lovely meeting you, John. I wish you all the best. He said, yeah, great meeting you, Frank. See you later. And then that was it.
Yeah. Oh.
So that was my first meeting with the Beatles.
Have you heard the story with John and Tom Jones? How that one went?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you got to go to YouTube, and what happens is Tom was sitting in an audience with his manager, and the Beatles came out, and basically they were practicing, and John imitated Tom Jones. It's on the net. I can't repeat what he said, but he really insulted Tom, and Tom wanted to knock him out. You've got to go into YouTube and watch it. That's one of the greatest stories I've ever seen.
You wouldn't want to mess with Tom, I don't think. I mean, he's a real man's man. But I ran into May Pang at the place called the Cutting Room in New York in 2008. And she was Yoko's assistant who went away with John on his, what they call his lost weekend, right? So she'd come along to the show. Marky Ramone came along as well and played needles and pins on drums with us as well, which is on YouTube, worth checking out. Anyway, I was chatting to May Pang after the show, and I was telling her that story about meeting John for the first time. And I said that my theory is that despite all his bluff and his aggression and bravado, he was as insecure as anyone else. And his method was to get the boot in before the other person had a chance to. And she said, "You've nailed it in one." That was exactly John. So that was. Yeah.
What about the other Beatles? Did you get on with anyone else? Like
Ringo, I barely had a passing, sentence with. George Harrison and I appeared in court together. When the Beatles were having a court case about the CD issue of their of the Hamburg tapes. That was it, because I was there when they were recorded, and I was invited to be a witness for the Beatles. I didn't have really anything I could help them with, but I got up before George gave his evidence on that day and did my bit. Though what I was doing, spending one of my days off, going into London to save the Beatles money, I don't know. I think they had more money than I did. But anyway, so George was nice, but no, George and Paul were the only people I had any real conversations with.
You mentioned Bruce Welch there. Yeah, well, he's a local as well to me, as is Pete Townsend, and they've both done forwards. You've got.
Are you in Richmond?
I live in Twickenham. I live in Witton. So,
all right, we're near enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So come visit. We'll meet up. But the thing is, so Pete Townsend is local, and so they've done these forwards for your two books. That if you'd like to tell us about the books, and we'll obviously put all the details out.
Yeah, well, the two books. I've written two books, and Pete Townsend and Bruce Welch have both written forewords. Pete Townsend did the first book I had, Traveling Man, which was a humorous look at the traveling side of our life through the years. The forewords for that one were done by Sir Cliff Richard, who we're great friends with, and Mark Knopfler, who I've had round to my dinner, jamming after dinner, which is, we had some great around here. When I put my second book out, which was the complete biography, it's called The Searchers on Me. You can still get both of these. I think that one's available on download now, The Searchers on Me. Yeah, the foreword by that. Pete Townsend did the most flattering foreword I've ever had. It was 2 pages long, and
really?
I couldn't have, if he was a fan, I couldn't have asked him to do better than that. So if you get a chance to read it, read it. And Bruce Welch did a very, very humorous one, because Bruce has been a friend of mine for a long, long time now. We've spent many hours around my house picking up guitars after dinner and jam sessioning with all the people we know in the music business. And he's one of the most wonderful people. I've been over to the house in Richmond lots of times, and also to Pete's house there as well. And Bruce comes.
Well, they're not far from each other.
Great friend. Bruce is one of my heroes.
When you were going up the charts with all these songs hitting #1, I mean, tell everybody there what the feeling is really like when you hit a #1 song, and how long that lasts with you, and what do you do? Like, it's mind-blowing for people that have never had a #1 song.
Yeah, well, actually, of course, I never had the #1, because I mean, I don't know why I'm downplaying myself like this, but I have to admit, when you walk in the room, although it's the best single, stopped at #3. So, but a #3 will do to me. That's absolutely fine. It was mind-blowing, because don't forget, the Searchers, before I joined them, had all the success with Sweet Smells Sweet, Sugar and Spice, Needles and Pins, Don't Throw Your Love Away, before they met me. And they'd done a new US tour, and they'd been on the Ed Sullivan Show. When I first met the Searchers in Hamburg, they were an unknown band. The band that I was with, Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers, it was a highly respected band. It was definitely one of the best bands in the UK ever. Cliff was a fantastic rhythm and blues singer, and just a great band. 7-piece, 2 saxophones, baritone and tenor guitars, wonderful. And by the time I met the Searchers, we'd actually already made 6 singles, a fully fledged recording band, not a sniff at the charts. I left, I joined the Searchers. The very next single that Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers had was a hit. As soon as I left them, they started having hits. I think that must say something about me. But there I was in the Searchers, touring the world, touring with the Rolling Stones, having a fantastic time, meeting all my idols. I don't care if I was at number one or not. I was excited. This was heaven for me. It's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a pop star.
To me, number 3 is as good as number 1. But let me tell you, can you tell me a little bit about the Rolling Stones and these other celebrities that you met?
The Stones, I was a bit frightened of the Stones, to be quite honest. We toured Australia with the Stones, as everyone knows, in '66. It was February and March '66, and in Melbourne we were down at St Kilda's in the Palais.
Yep, exactly. That's down the road from me.
That's right. Yeah, we were with we did small places in those days, didn't we? You know, so that was fantastic. But I was always on the periphery of Jagger and Richards, and at that time Brian Jones was very distant as well, because they were obviously having troubles. They didn't last very long after that. I got on the best, of course, with Bill Wyman and Charlie. Charlie had his wife Shirley out there at the time. She was a lovely lady. Charlie and Shirley were just, you know, a lovely couple. Bill was the friendliest guy on earth. I remember in New Zealand, Bill was going to meet friends of his, and he hired a limousine to take him there and invited me to go with him. Just lovely, lovely memories. Mick was always funny and nice, but I never really got to know him. I was always kind of after my meeting with Lennon, I was always a bit scared about meeting people after that. But they were great people. I was more a Beatles fan than a Stones fan, I have to admit. I suppose people did, you know, they chose their sides in those days. It was an important thing to say you've toured with the Stones across Australia. It's something special, isn't it?
I just got to say, in '66, you were on Bandstand with Brian Henderson, and that's actually on DVD here in Australia. The DVDs of Bandstand. Everyone go and check them out. But let me tell you, Frank, the fact that you've written some great books, and I want everybody to go out and buy the books, right? They can learn more about the stories, about your life, what you did, and this is what it's all about. When you came into the band, you're like, with the greatest band, as far as I'm concerned, they're equal to the Beatles. 2 different bands, but I'll tell you what, Jerry and the Pacemakers, the Searchers, the Beatles, you know, like, that is as high as you can go. And going over to the States, as I said, then coming to Australia, it's like, and touring the world. I mean, it's mind-boggling when you look at your fantastic career, because you joined them in '64 and your farewell concert was in 2019. That's right, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And I've made so many friends in Australia through the years. I'm still in touch with all the time. Red Bond, Alan Bond's old wife. I meet her all the time. I remember the first time in '64 when we had When You Walk in the Room out. They didn't have such a thing as videos then, and we weren't in the UK. It was going up the charts. We weren't around to promote it, which is probably why it never quite made the #1 spot. But they actually they got a film crew to film us in Sydney Harbour, and it was a fantastic video. We were on this island in the harbour, and there was the Opera House in the background, and there was a sailing boat going by. It was such an atmospheric video promoting When You Walk in the Room. I think it's been lost for all time. That video or film has never been revived. I don't know if it's in someone's vault somewhere, whether they've filmed over it. So much stuff has been lost. But if that ever surfaces again, I'd love to see that. All right. Oh yeah, that's one of our compilation albums. Oh gosh, who's that young lad?
I'm a bit of a vinyl. I love my vinyl, and if you look in the background, I mean, that's my music corner, my little alcove. And I have all my vinyl there.
Oh, and then
I have this CD, which is a double CD.
Oh, yeah, I know that one. Yes, fine. Yeah.
Really,
again, actually, that shirt I'm wearing there was from the '66 tour. I bought it in the Philippines on the way to Australia. We did a couple of days at the Araneta Coliseum.
Oh, that's really groovy. It's a groovy shirt, Frank. Do you still have it?
Yeah, no, I don't. It was some big
Oh,
supermarket in Manila, and Mr. Araneta, who owned the Coliseum, took us to the supermarket and sent us around to find out what we wanted, and he just took the bill at the end of it. But I remember buying that shirt there.
oh yeah. Someday we're gonna love again.
Yep.
That one.
Yeah, that was the last single that Tony Jackson played on. It
Right.
wasn't, it was a bit of a disappointment. So it was very nice when I joined and When You Walk in the Room zoomed up there, because I think that one only reached about number 12. And, you know, up to then, all the songs have been 1, 2, or, yeah, they've all been 1 and 2 up to that point. So thank goodness When You Walk in the Room had me on it.
There's a compilation out now of all the Pie singles. You've seen that one. It's a great little box set. It's got a picture of you guys. Are you familiar with that?
Right.
It says all the Pie recordings.
Right. Well, I've got them all in some form. I get lost. There's so many of these compilation ones. I mean, I've got a thing up there. There's one of our silver discs up there from one of the compilations, and then that's an old silver disc for When You Walk in the Room up there. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. They're the type the Beatles got for Love Me Do.
That's right. Well, that was the original one. I just joined the band. When You Walk in the Room was a hit. In those days, they only gave you one. If you got a gold record, there was one gold record. If you got a silver disc, there was one. Now the cleaner gets one. The promotion guy gets one. You get one. You can buy one made for your mother. That's the only one of When You Walk in the Room.
We want to thank you so much, Frank Allen, for being on. Go straight to the top of the charts with the fabulous Sabine. We're going to tell you, the world loves you. Australia loves you more. And if you ever come to Australia in Melbourne, we'll catch up. I'll take you out for a dinner, because you are a music legend that lives on forever. And I want you to know that, Frank, we love you.
Well, that is so flattering. I'm very pleased.
Yeah.
Slightly over the top, but it's always welcome. Thank you to you, and thank you, Sabine.
This is the most amazing part.
Yeah.
When you came into the band and then they recorded When You Walk in the Room, in your case, it was I walked into the band. So you walked into the band and the first song you did was When You Walk in the Room. Is that totally amazing or what?
It's great. I just, whatever it is, it's given me a great life. 56 years with a great band, 56 years of touring places like Australia. And I'm not kidding when I say this, because I've said it so many times to people. The one country I really miss touring in is Australia. And I loved all going to all those little towns and having a night off and beer, bar hopping and restaurant hopping in all those places that even Australians never get to see. Magical place.
Well, thanks again, Frank, for being on. Go straight to the top of the charts.